Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Empathy at the Table. You've probably seen that David Letterman Netflix, and my next guest needs no introduction. Well, this is Keld Jensen here. My next guest needs no introduction. If you do a Google search for negotiation gurus worldwide, you'll see his name. Keld has written several books. He's been in the world of negotiation for many, many years. And this is the second time, and which I rarely do, is to invite somebody back for a second time to Empathy at the Table. The reason I've invited Keld back is because the last time we spoke was over a year ago, and many, many things have changed in the world of negotiation. Many things have changed in the world, period. And I wanted to get Keld's take on things. And so we're having a quick chat off mic, and I thought we'd bring that conversation straight mic. I've got questions, but I think we're going to kind of freestyle this conversation and see where it takes us. So Keld Jensen, thank you for joining us once again, and Happy New Year for joining us on Empathy at the Table.
Happy New Year, Tony, and thank you for having me back. I can truly say in the last 6 months, I've been doing so many podcasts because of my new book. But and I'm not just saying that to please you, but you were one of my favorites since we did it last time. I don't know what it is you got, Tony, but you really got it great and engaging with your guests in a very special way. So that's a big compliment to you.
Thank you, Keld. I appreciate that. And as I said, thank you for coming back to the show. So we were talking off mic about this idea of what you do. And the reason you do what you do is not because you're looking for accolades. I mean, it happens to be that you receive plenty of accolades, but you're not doing it for the accolades. You're doing this because you genuinely have a belief that this is what you were born to do, and you want to kind of change the way people see negotiation. And that tends to rub people up the wrong way, or certain elements up the wrong way. Pause, reflect, and I would love to hear your comments.
Yes, it's well. Let's take 3 steps back first and foremost, because I wasn't born into this role in what I'm doing now. I started my career in technology and ended up being a CEO of a public tech company in Stockholm back in the late 90s. And then in 1998, I met my former partner who founded our organization in 1976 in Stockholm. And he moved me from being unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent in the world of negotiation in 2 hours. So I realized, to be specific, in March 1998 that I was a horrible negotiator, and I was heading a company with hundreds of employees and a huge revenue. And that made me think there must be a lot of people just like me who are negotiating for millions of dollars every single year and really don't know what they're doing. The reason I'm saying that, Tony, is because that was kind of a call for me. That was a wake-up call. Because just before we went on air, we were talking about why we do what we're doing. And I don't want to sound religious, but what I'm doing is really a mission. Yes, I'm running a business. Yes, we got to create a revenue. But it's really a mission. I wake up every morning and I'm thrilled and engaged because I want to change and improve the way we collaborate and negotiate. And there's so much room for improvement. There are a lot of great negotiators out there, thank God, but there's also a bunch of really horrible negotiators. And obviously, there's not a right way and a wrong way to negotiate, but there's certainly what I would call experience and facts, or emotions and facts, or opinions and facts. And one of the things, Tony, in the last couple of years is that I finished my doctorate, and when you do a doctorate, you are being educated through a period of 3 years to research. You're being trained how to research. And that taught me that there is a difference between opinions and facts. And I have a 6-year-old, and he actually came home just the other day and said, "Dad, we were taught about opinions and facts in school today." And then he described to me, what is the difference between an opinion and fact? And I was laughing, thinking, that's great when you're a 6-year-old, you're being taught something like that. And that reminded me, especially when I looked at LinkedIn, but certainly also working with clients, that there's so much opinion in our world. Not only in our world of negotiation, but in the world in general. And experience is great, but it's not sufficient. So if somebody's coming and saying, I think collaboration and trust is naive, that's an opinion, that's not research fact. If somebody's been conducting 2,000 simulation, comparing the exact same negotiation, and conclude that collaboration and trust is naive, then it's fact, because then it's been researched. So I've kind of lost patience with people who are throwing opinions left and right, because it's their opinion and they're entitled to an opinion, but that doesn't make it right. So back to what you were saying, that I provoke some people, and it actually surprises me, Tony, once in a while, because what I'm preaching and believe in it is that trust, collaboration, transparency, and honesty is the best way forward in negotiation. And I'm sorry, this is turning into a lecture, but I just want to wrap my comment up right now. I had a scary experience just a few months ago. I was working with a major energy company, not mentioning any names. I was in Houston, and I was working with supply chain and procurement department. We've been sitting there for 3 days, and one individual in the group of about 20 people, after my partner Jason Mirowitz and I have been working with them for 3 days, talking about the concept of partnership, collaboration, honesty, and transparency. He was not joking. He raised his hand and then he said, "Isn't it unethical to be honest and transparent in negotiation?" And Tony, I don't know how you would respond to a question like that, but I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And I looked at my partner, Dr. Jason Mirowitz, who's been doing this a number of years as well. And I think it was the first time in my career I didn't honestly know how to respond to a question, because I can repeat it again, isn't it unethical to be honest and transparent? And that made me think, is that where some people are in the world right now? And if that's the case, then I do understand why I provoke some people. If they feel that negotiation and collaboration is about being dishonest, isn't about being transparent, and is all about holding back information. So yeah, anyway, sorry, that was a long lecture, but it inspires me when you ask the question why some people get slightly provoked by what I'm doing, because my purpose is the absolute opposite.
I mean, it is a really a big thing in the world of negotiation, and it really whipped up a hornet's nest last year and the year before. I think it repeats. It's a cycle that repeats itself. And, you know, my podcast is called Empathy at the Table, right? And I teach emotionally intelligent negotiation. So this is all about really understanding not just yourself, but also understanding what might be driving the other person in real time, and being able to make decisions in real time. Now, I'm not a proponent of this idea of hiding things. I really don't believe in that in a negotiation. But what I do believe in is I believe that if there's things I can't reveal in a negotiation, I can at least be honest about that. I think it's fair to say, you know, obviously for obvious reasons, you know, this I can't reveal, this I can't reveal. Yeah. But I think it's important to be transparent about that and the reasons why you cannot. Otherwise, you'd be being a bit naive if you were to say, well, yes, here I am, open kimono, I'm going to reveal everything. And I think that's sometimes where people get confused with what we talk about being honest and transparent within negotiation.
I absolutely agree, Tony. Sure, there are things you shouldn't reveal. There are things you're not allowed to share. But I completely 100% agree with what you said. Then be honest about that, saying, you know, I can't share that information because of company policy or whatever the reason is. That's absolutely fine. So, you know, I agree with you as well. Some people, and that's not the purpose, some people confuse naivety with being transparent. And it's not the same thing, because when you are transparent, you cannot become naive, because then you're going to lose the game. So you have to be tactical about your transparency. That doesn't mean you should hold anything back. I mean, I'm one of these guys that don't believe that negotiation is a game. You know, the whole thing about being tactical and, you know, manipulate sympathy and empathy and all the nice phrases out there. To me, there's only one reason. I call myself a commercial negotiator, and I believe there's only one reason why two commercial organizations, that is to create and distribute value. And I repeat, because it's important. They negotiate to create and distribute value. And I can prove that the best way of doing that is to do that through a very collaborative process. Being open, being transparent without becoming naive, identifying the asymmetric value. And in order to find that value, you have to be transparent. But again, just to wrap up, completely agree. Being transparent and honest doesn't mean that it's not an open book. You shouldn't step in there and say, look, Tony, this is everything I got, you know, and then just take off my clothes. That's not what I'm talking about.
So I had a situation, and I'd like you to share your opinion on this through the lens of trust and collaboration. So I had a large client that we were working with within my business, my conferences business, and so we'd negotiated a contract with them, and we'd negotiated a contract to work with them for 5 years. So we were providing conferencing services to this company. It was a fairly big deal, and after the first year, I spoke to my contact and I said, just out of interest, we'd built up some trust, we'd built up some rapport. So, we'd been working well for a while. And I said, just out of interest, why did you choose to work with us and not our competitors? And they said, well, we chose to work with you, number one, because you took the time to come and meet us. It wasn't a phone call or a Zoom call. While everyone else was sending us emails, you got on a plane and you came to meet us. That was number one. Number two, we kind of liked you when you showed up, and we got along well, and we thought that was good. But I must warn you, Tony, that if we are not happy with anything, or if we find a better deal, we won't tell you. We will just stop working with you. Mm. And I remember thinking, wow, well, so where does trust come into it there, right? When somebody actually says, because they were being open and honest and saying, we will stop working with you if we find a better deal or if you do something we don't like. And they wouldn't even give us an opportunity to try and fix the problem. They said, we will just stop working with you and we won't even tell you. How would you respond to a comment like that through the lens of trust and collaboration?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's an interesting dilemma you're presenting, because on one hand, they kind of told you that they picked you because of who you are and they like you. On the other hand, if trust was really present, you would try and help your counterpart to improve something that they messed up, or a situation where they're not competitive. So in my world, there's a conflict. Now, what I would do is actually take 3 steps back and negotiate on how to negotiate, even before you end up in that situation. So even pre-deal, pre-contract, I would have setting up the rules, what do we do, and perhaps even verbalize trust. And that's another thing, by the way, provoke. I say, you should verbalize trust, put trust on the agenda. So on the agenda, you might have who's who and who got the mandate and what are we going to talk about today, but also an item called trust. So what happens, Tony, if we work together for the next 6 months and I suddenly feel that trust is declining, I should be allowed to raise that topic without offending you, and you should be able to do the same. So be honest about your emotions. So I would have built that in to that agreement. One of the I'm standing on the shoulders of so many heroes, and one of them is Dr. Daniel Kahneman, that you probably know and everybody knows. The father of behavioral economics, and he was out very early and he got the Nobel Prize in economics by saying we would always prefer to do business with somebody we trust and like, that got the worst product at the highest price, compared to somebody we don't like and don't trust that has the most competitive product at the lowest price. And the interesting thing is Dr. Kahneman is absolutely right. I often use this example with critical people who don't believe that trust is a monetary value, where I hold up 2 identical products, simple products, and say, you've been buying this product here, Tony, from a supplier for, let's say, 6 years. It could be a glass or bottle or whatever. You're very happy with that supplier. Everything is going smoothly. They promised what they've been holding, whatever they promised. So the relationship is great. But here's your challenge. A new supplier pops up on the market offering the exact same product. No difference in the product or service whatsoever. However, you get this stomach sensation from this new supplier that you can't put your finger on it, but you don't trust that individual. You don't really like that individual. And here's the challenge. The new supplier is 1% cheaper than the old one. Who would you continue doing business with? I promise you, Tony, 99.5% says, well, with 1% price difference, I'll continue with the old one. And then I just escalated by saying, what if the price was 3% difference, 5% price difference, 7% price difference? And typically around 8 to 10%, people start switching, saying, now I would go to the new one, despite I don't like him and don't trust him. And I say, congratulations, you just proved that we can price trust, because you did it right there. To pay 7, 8, 9, 10% more from somebody that you like and trust with the same product compared to somebody you don't like and don't trust. So we have to understand that the relationship is essential. And I love the part of your story where they said, we picked you because you got on a plane, you came to see us instead of doing emails, I like you when you got here. We had good personal chemistry. And that means a lot. And we have a tendency to forget that, especially post-COVID. I think there's a lot of CFOs out there, Tony, who are thinking, yeah, in travel costs now because we don't need to send people out to visit people. And I think that's absolutely wrong. Anyway, to answer your question, I would probably pre-contract have been trying to negotiate the emotional side of the business as well. And kind of build in the regulations so there would be something saying if we get a better offer than what you're offering, then we have to sit down and talk about that, you know. Because it's weird to me that they like you, trust you, and then they say we will not tell you if somebody comes and are more competitive than you. That's kind of conflicting.
Yeah, I found that. I mean, to tell you how the story ended, we ended up working with them for 4 years, and it was a great collaboration. And then towards the end, it just got a little bit messy. I felt that they began to take advantage of us because they were a very large company. We were a smaller company. So we ended up terminating the relationship just on that basis. Heraclitus says a man does not step in the same river twice because it's not the same river and he's not the same man. We last spoke about 1.5 years ago. So what's changed for you since we last spoke?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, actually, Tony. I would say several things have changed. One of the things is that I have dived into the world of AI, like so many other people. So my new book, The Smart Negotiator, that was released just a couple of months ago, focuses on how we should embrace and utilize AI in negotiation. And back to our talk about opinions and facts, we based the book on a huge study we did where we had 423 teams, real teams, negotiating a simulation globally. So we had teams of 2 people negotiating against other 2 people. And the way we do it, I'll go through this very quickly, is that we had one negotiation being conducted without the use of AI. We had one negotiation conducted where one side was using AI and the counterpart wasn't. And then we had one negotiation where both sides were using AI. Same simulation, same time to prepare, same time to conduct the actual negotiation. And we repeated this, as I said, more than 400 times. And then we looked at the outcome afterwards. And what was amazing, Tony, was to see the difference between especially the teams where none of them were using AI compared to the 2 teams where both of them were using AI and knew how to use AI. Just to summarize it quickly. When we compared value discovered, the negotiation team using AI were superior in basically identifying every piece of value that was available in that negotiation. They didn't leave anything on the table. They were way better prepared. They conducted the negotiation before deadline, where the teams negotiating without the use of AI almost every single time ran out of time. They couldn't conclude within the time allowed. And here comes back to what we just talked about, the most surprising to me outcome of the study as well. And that was trust, transparency, and honesty went through the roof in the negotiation where both parties were using AI. So a surprising conclusion, and all this, by the way, is not only in the book, it was also released as a peer-reviewed research paper. The surprise is actually, the conclusion is that AI supported trust, transparency, and honesty. So people got more honest the second they start using AI. I didn't see that one coming, and I probably got that question more than anything else. Why is that? And my answer is I don't know, because we were not looking for that answer. I don't know why it happened. I can only guess. I can't prove it. And my guess is that, you know, when people feel prepared and know their data, there's a tendency they're a bit more open and sharing. You know, the safe word in negotiation is no, right? I feel uncomfortable, so I'm going to say no. I don't know the data, so I'm going to say no. I'm not well prepared, so I'm going to say no. If you're well prepared, know your cost, know your benefit, know your framework, you might be more intrigued into saying yes, right? Because you know the consequences of if you're saying yes. So that's my guess. But anyway, the conclusion, clear conclusion, this was a study we did in 2024. The absolute clear conclusion is that AI made the outcome financially, collaboration-wise, and everything else superior to a negotiation without the use of AI. So you're probably looking at one of the biggest fans of utilizing AI in negotiations sitting right here.
And when you say utilizing AI, what specifically does that mean?
To me, AI is just a tool, like a spreadsheet or an Excel sheet or computer or whatever. Another question I get a lot these days, Tony, is should we tell the counterpart that we're using AI in negotiation? And I'm always laughing, and my normal reply is, would you tell the counterpart if you use a spreadsheet? And they say, no, of course not. Well, there you go. AI to me is just a tool like everything else. So to summarize very quickly, preparing your negotiation, preparing the question, listing variable that is negotiable, identify asymmetric value that I call necroeconomics, listing a variable, an agenda, getting more knowledge about the counterpart, running a simulation of that negotiation before you're doing it. The list goes on and on and on about all the things that you can use AI for. I mean, you have the perfect opportunity, as I just said, to run a mock negotiation of that negotiation before you actually do it. I mean, how could we do that previously? So I would say stepping into a negotiation today and not using AI is a big mistake. I'm a firm believer, Tony. I don't know if AI is going to replace negotiators. I hope not, because I think it's a very human process. But I'm certain, and this is a promise from my side, that negotiators using AI will replace negotiators not using AI. That's a fact. We need to know how to use it properly. We shouldn't become naive either. But using it correctly, it gives us such an amazing amount of tools, and we can save so much time. And by the way, one of the things we use AI to a lot these days with clients is actually to renegotiate existing contracts, which is something that a lot of people are not happy to do because it's, we're done with that. Why should we renegotiate? Well, we should renegotiate if we could identify $4 million, right? So taking a contract, 76 pages or whatever it is, run it through AI, ask it for macroeconomics, trust currency, and all the other terms we're using to find value. And 46 seconds later, your AI bot will come out and say, well, you should negotiate this variable, you should look at this one, you can improve this one, you could find value down here. So we have already now in the last year created so many success stories that it's just amazing how much money that is just lying around.
I had a conversation with a CEO in a tech company just this morning.
Yep.
And what he was saying to me was that he's really interested in looking at how AI can help free up time. So if I could use AI to free up 20% of your time, right? And then he said, well, what's really interesting to me is what we will then do with that extra 20% of our time. And so when you talk about the scenario of AI in negotiation, so I can envisage a time when your AI bot will talk to the AI bot of one of your clients, and they will negotiate with each other and they will find value, AI to AI. At that point, what does Keld do?
I do all the fun stuff, and the fun stuff is going out and having lunch with you, Tony. I create the relationship. I do the social thing. I create trust. I create the relationship. Everything that human beings find, most people find fun, right? Who likes, I don't want to offend anybody because we do have CPAs and accountants and stuff, but who likes sitting looking into a spreadsheet 8 hours a day? Most negotiators don't, and if they do, they're not real negotiators. I'm provoking somebody right here. So I would do all the fun stuff because AI is doing all the tedious stuff. And that's how I look at AI. It can handle all the stuff that would take me 8 hours and can do that in 20 minutes. So that's the great upside of AI. Talking about that, OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, released a study just a few weeks ago, and it is OpenAI that did it, so you have to be a little careful with the outcome because they were obviously promoting ChatGPT. But what they claimed was that they looked at procurement specifically, and they said that ChatGPT could already today save a professional procurement officer around 45 or 46% of their working time. 1 year ago, that was 37%. They could create a total savings, I don't remember the exact number now, but we're talking billions of dollars in utilizing their time and be more efficient. And what they also claimed is the percentage of where AI hallucinates today, or ChatGPT, was now below 3%. Now, when I share these numbers, I meet people who say 3%, that's a lot. And then I'm saying it actually not. I mean, if you look at human beings, I think most of us mess up more than 3% of our working time. So if you have ChatGPT only messing up 3% of its time, I'm pretty impressed. And it can only get better from now. So anyway, back to your question, what do we do with all that time? Create better relationships. Spend that time on creating stronger and better relationship with other people.
I think that's a really good point, actually, Keld. We're not really focusing on that, but the hidden potential that exists in meeting somebody for a coffee, right? And just having one of those weird tangential conversations that AI cannot do. AI is is kind of a logical, sequential kind of approach to negotiating or to solving problems. But that kind of the magic that happens when two people get together and they're not under any pressure, I think that's something to look forward to. I remember you said, Keld, we negotiate 8,000 to 10,000 times a year. And I remember when I heard that statistic, I thought 22 times a day negotiating. When you look at that as what is it that you consider a negotiation? If somebody was listening in now and they're thinking, well, I don't negotiate 22 times a day, what is it that you consider a negotiation?
That's a big question. I have 3 kids. Do I need to say anything else? And a wife. Quick story. When my daughter was a teenager, thank God she's not that anymore. She got out of it. But when she was a teenager, typical morning, Tony, just this is an average morning, she would come out of her room, and a slightly conservative dad would look at her and say, are you going to be dressed like that for school today? And she would say yes, and I would say no, and we would have the first negotiation about how she would get dressed. The topic number 2 for my daughter would then be, I'm going to a party on Saturday. And I said, no, you're not, because you had a horseback riding competition Sunday morning. She was riding at and you have to relax Saturday evening. And she would say, I can do both. And I would be saying, no, you can't. And we would negotiate about that. Then she would say, oh, by the way, I'm going to Bulgaria with some friends on my summer vacation this summer. And I was laughing and saying, you're way too young. You're going with your family. We'll negotiate about that. And I promise you, a typical morning with my daughter when she was a teenager, we would go through 10, 12, 14 negotiations every morning before she would leave my household. And then I had negotiated with my other kids or my wife or my clients or my associate or anybody else. And I'm not even including, in the 8,000 to 10,000 negotiations per year, I'm not even including all the negotiation you have with yourself.
Yes.
I mean, how many people have made New Year's resolutions, right? I should exercise more. I should exercise 5 times a week. 3 would probably be okay. But 2 is okay, right? That's a negotiation. You're negotiating with yourself. So everybody gets shocked when I claim that they negotiate 8,000 to 10,000 times a year. Then I give them a few examples, and they all realize, shoot, I am actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah, and it's stats like that I use those, and I like it because, like you, I feel like I'm on a crusade to democratize negotiation. I don't want people to be afraid and hate the word. I remember you shared the story of the actual history of negotiation, right, and how we very first started to negotiate, and how that really hasn't been upgraded since it began. Maybe you want to share the story for new listeners.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, well, obviously we've been negotiating since the dawn of time, but modern negotiation is Adam Smith, the Scottish philosopher who was walking around in the Scottish Highland. And in 1776, he wrote the book, The Wealth of Nations, where first time it was actually written and documented how nations should do trade with each other and how businesses should do trade with each other. And that book, by the way, is still perceived as the Bible of the capitalistic system if you believe you're living in a capitalistic society. The problem with that book is that Adam Smith said very clearly, you should only do what's good for yourself. So, capitalism is preaching egocentric behavior, a transactional negotiation. And here comes Dr. Nash in the 60s, the famous American professor who won the Nobel Prize. Hollywood found him so interesting, so they actually produced a movie about him. And he came out and said, you know what, Adam Smith is absolutely wrong. Because from a financial point of view, and Dr. Nass was certainly not a socialist or communist or anything else, he was just from a mathematical point of view proving that Adam Smith was wrong. Because he said the best result will always come from you're doing what's best for yourself and the group at the same time. That's the only way we can all win. And Dr. Nash's philosophy is actually the foundation of our necroeconomics. So, and I think there's a lot of people who are still stuck in the thinking of Adam Smith, that negotiation is a transactional thing. And if you win, I lose. And if I win, you lose. Where from a mathematical point of view, and I'm a strong believer in collaboration, not only because I think it's a better way and being nice to people doesn't hurt anybody, but from a financial point of view, it does make more sense. And that has been proven so many times through research and financial studies as well. Anyway, negotiation is obviously way older than that, but let's just start in 1776 and say that was the first time somebody actually wrote how we should conduct business with each other.
Then, of course, the people always say this, people who are in the negotiation world, that the big shift came when Getting to Yes came out, right? When Harvard decided to do a study into this. Now, this is what I've heard. Maybe you can fact check this for me and tell me. So I heard that the reason the Harvard program on negotiation was created was because the American government were looking for different ways to negotiate with Russia at the time. And so they paid Harvard a huge sum of money to try and figure out other ways to communicate, to engage with Russia. And that's how the program on negotiation was founded. I'm not sure whether that's an urban myth or whether it's true. Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, I've heard something similar. Again, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I heard the same story. I am absolutely a big fan of everything Harvard has been doing. And I think Getting to Yes was the first book that really tried to persuade all of us to change the way we negotiate. However, Howard is by far not the first one. The first research on collaborative negotiation was actually established all the way back in the 20s. In the 50s and the 60s, you had people coming out talking about collaborative negotiation. And in 1976, the founder of our negotiation, Dr. Ivar Unt from Sweden, actually published his first book on collaboration. He was actually approached by Harvard if he wanted to collaborate with them on this concept. Getting to Yes, best-selling ever book on negotiation, but by far not the first one out there. It was just the first one, I would say, that was globally known for that. But the thinking about collaborative negotiation was actually established by a woman all the way back in the 20s who was not thinking about, couldn't we do this very differently than the way we... But by the way, another way I sometimes provoke people, Tony, is when I say that I think Getting to Yes is a big failure. That can really provoke people. And what do I mean by I say that? I'm not criticizing the book. I think it's an amazing book. However, I meet so many professionals who got the book in the bookshelf and they might have even read it 3 times, but they're not doing anything of what the book states you're supposed to do. So then the book is a failure, isn't it? Because, if people are not adapting the concept, the ideas, or what have you, then it's not really sharing the purpose in a good way.
There was someone in the negotiation community. I won't say their name, but I know we both know this person, and I'm actually a big fan of his approach. I've had him on the show, and we talked about this idea of why there was such an adversity to collaborative negotiation. Why it wound so many people up. It really did cause a stir when people start talking about collaborative negotiation. And so when I spoke to this guest, what actually came out, which was it was a revelation to me, was sometimes, of course, collaborative negotiation is the preferred choice, but not instead of avoiding negotiate. When it comes to avoiding conflict, if it's used as a conflict avoidance method, and if people are teaching you to be collaborative because they want you to avoid dealing with conflict, then it can be detrimental, because conflict is an inevitable part of our human interaction. So at the same time, we're teaching collaborative negotiation, we should also be giving people some approaches and some tools to be able to handle conflict at the same time. Where do you shake out with that school of thinking?
Maybe surprising, but I kind of agree. I'm working with what we call a strategy assessment matrix, which is a very simple matrix that is vertical and horizontal. And we basically look at collaboration between two individuals or two parties, saying how important is the counterpart to you and how important are you to the counterpart. If both parties are very important to each other, we end up in the top right corner. If you're in a commodity market, in a commercial negotiation space where neither party is important to each other, you end up in the lower left button. Now, if you are in the top right button, both parties are very important to each other, you have to move into a collaborative negotiation. Not doing that is seriously unintelligent. So for instance, merger acquisitions. I am involved as an advisor. I've been doing numerous merger acquisition deals with clients. And 9 out of 10 times they start transactional, zero-sum orientated. And it's the dumbest thing on earth. And quite often it's driven by lawyers, attorneys, and financial experts that have, again, I'm provoking people, have no freaking idea on how to negotiate. So the only way they know how to negotiate is combative, conflict orientated, and they are killing value and not developing value. So merger acquisition, even though people are saying, well, it's a one-time transaction, yes, but you are very important to us, and we are very important to you. So we should be in the top right corner. On the other hand, Tony, if we are in a market, a commodity market, where you have hundreds of suppliers, hundreds of clients, and we're talking about selling something stupid like glasses, so chair, whatever, something standard product, why waste time on what we call smart collaborative negotiation? Go into a tender, do a transactional deal. So in the toolbox we are operating with, we are not naive. So we're not saying that collaborative smartnership should be used every time, everywhere. We even train our clients into dealing with counterparts that are not collaborative. But one of the first advice we give to people is that you have to identify that you need that counterpart and you have to negotiate with them. For instance, if you are dealing with somebody who got monopoly, I'm always saying that's the worst party, isn't it? Because if you're dealing with somebody who got monopoly, your alternative is what? There isn't any. So you have to negotiate with them whether you like it or not. And in that case, well, then you have to do what you have to do, right?
Right.
I would still, even in conflicts, trying to deal with conflicts, not using conflict tools. I'm often using this example, Tony. If you travel in Asia, their understanding of hospitality is just way more advanced than us in the West. I mean, if you check into what they call a 6 or 7 star hotel in Asia, the service you're getting there is out of this world, right? So let's assume, Tony, you check into the Oriental in Bangkok, known to be one of the best hotels in the world. And you go to your room, but you're unsatisfied with your room for whatever reason. So you go back to reception to complain. What do you think they're going to do at the reception? You're basically creating a conflict because you're going down there to complain. I can promise you the staff at the reception is not going to look at you, Tony, and saying, oh, shut up. You can check out and leave and go to another hotel because we're the Oriental. They're not going to say that, right? Even though you could say they are entitled to do that, but they wouldn't. They're not going to say, you know what, Tony, you're absolutely right. You've got one of the worst rooms in the entire hotel. They're not going to do that. What they're going to do, and listen very carefully, they will say the following. Let me see if I can help you solve the problem you feel you got. Did you get that? I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just showing empathy. I understand you feel you got an issue. Let me see if I can help you deal with that issue. So de-escalating a conflict to me through a collaborative process is always better than trying to get into confrontation. Yes, can you always use a collaborative approach to deal with conflicts? Obviously not. But you have to be very careful, and we have a whole bunch of tools and a checklist that you have to go through before you choose conflict to deal with conflicts.
Yeah.
But as a last resort, yes, sometimes you have to deal with a combative orientated negotiator with combative tools. I'm not a big fan, but it is an advice I share with my clients as well. I have to say though, I often see this approach mostly from attorneys.
Yeah. What you said, I think, is really key. Is we have the power to turn a competitive negotiation into a collaborative negotiation, right? And more often than not, there exists that possibility. When those possibilities don't exist, you have two choices. You either walk away, or you also get competitive. And I think the school of thinking is we shouldn't be walking away because we don't know how to negotiate competitively. We should walk away because we choose not to engage. And that's the difference between the two. I just as we're coming to the end, you know, Keld, I could talk to you for ages on this subject, and probably I will find the time. Where are you actually based at the moment? Where are you? You're based in the States, right?
Yeah, I'm in Southern California.
Southern California, yeah. I'm on one of my road trips. I'll definitely make the time to see if we can.
No, you're always
kind of,
welcome.
yeah, that'd be great.
I'll take you out for lunch.
Yeah, I'd love that. I wanted to ask you about your book, Keld, right?
Mm-hmm.
About the book, it came out in last year, right?
Yeah, it came out in what was it? October.
Yeah, The Smart Negotiator. Could you give us a few juicy tidbits? If I was to pick up that book or recommend, what pages would you say? What chapters would you say? These are the ones that are absolute must reads, and these are the challenges that they're looking to solve.
Prompt engineering, how to use AI in negotiation, what prompt to use. We have listed hundreds and hundreds of prompts that you can just copy paste and use directly to improve your negotiation. So the first part of a book is basically taking a step back and explaining why you should do it and why AI will make an impact and improve your negotiation a little bit more at a strategy level. And the second part of the book is really just a toolbox on how you should use AI. So it's basically why using AI and how to use AI.
One of my clients actually said to me, if I told you that in 3 years' time, aliens are coming to Earth, and these aliens are going to be superior beings to you, they're going to know everything about you, they're going to know more than you can even know in a lifetime, and they're on their way, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. What would you do differently?
That's a wonderful question. Well, we don't. Are they friendly or unfriendly? Is that something we know?
We don't know. We don't know. All we know is that they're here and they're on their way, and there's nothing we can do to stop them, and they are far superior to us.
It's a great question, Tony. I think the boring answer to the question is I don't think there's a lot of stuff I would do differently. I'm actually very satisfied and happy with what I'm doing right now. What I would like to do is having more time to do what I'm doing, because I feel that changing people's mindset is not something that happens overnight. And I'm slightly impatient, so I would like to reach out to more people quicker, or have the community. It's not only me, but raising the awareness of the importance of good negotiators quickly. And that includes you and all the colleagues in the industry I respect and admire. I would like that we reach more people faster and quicker. And unfortunately, we're living in a world where the quick fix and the pop culture and what sounds entertaining grabs the attention.
Yeah.
And when somebody who's serious and boring like me brings out a topic, or Dan Shapiro from Harvard or somebody like that comes out, which is really substantial and important, there's a tendency that people go where the light is flickering instead, because that's a quick 20-second message that is easy to adapt. So to answer your question, Tony, I think I would like to be able to use warp speed and reach more people more quicker than I'm doing right now. Because we can only reach a few thousand people every year, and that's not a lot if you look at the entire world. So the aliens are coming in 3 years, and we need to be better negotiators. That would be it.
think you're being a bit unfair when you say that you're boring and you're not attracting much attention. I think if I look across the spectrum of the landscape of negotiators, I wouldn't be wrong in saying that you've quickly achieved celebrity status within the world of negotiation, for good or bad. I mean, sometimes that can be a great thing, and other times not. But I certainly, you're up there, and I applaud everyone in the negotiation space because I really want the more people to get involved in it, to understand it, and ultimately, Keld, to figure it out for themselves. There are as many people on the earth as there are different styles of negotiating, depending on many different factors. And I think, our work is to first bring that to the forefront and let people know that they're in a negotiation, because a lot of people, as you said, don't even recognize that they're in a negotiation. And once that's been done, then they seek out people like yourself, myself, to do the heavy lifting. So I want to congratulate you on the work that you've been doing. You've definitely put your head down and you've just kept, going head first, focusing on doing, and you've stayed true to your word. And the more people that listen to you, the more people that get involved and engage in the world of negotiation, I think the better for all of us. So, Keld, thank you so much for spending the time with us today on Empathy at the Table. And I look forward to the triplet, to meeting again a third time, probably maybe towards the end of the year, but maybe face to face.
Sure, I would love that, Tony. Always, just let me know.
Thank you. Keld Jensen, thanks for joining us on Empathy at the Table.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bye-bye.